He used to say the city had a sky made of glass. It reflected wealth, fear, and secrets. On the morning the story begins, a small bus rattled past jacaranda trees and turned into a gated community where cream walls glowed like bone. In that bus, a village girl named Amina gripped a canvas bag and hid a little tin of sunflower seeds, her symbol of hope. Her father gave it to her years ago when they planted a tiny patch near their clay house. The seeds were all she kept through storms, layoffs, and long hungry nights. She believed if she protected these seeds, one day life would have room for good things again. The driver coughed, waved her off at the mansion entrance, and left. The gate opened with a buzz like a bored bee. A tall guard in a dark uniform checked her letter of employment. He frowned, then smirked. "You are the new maid?" "Yes, sir." "You look like a wind could take you away." "It has tried," she said softly. Inside, the mansion was a museum of polished floors, glass railings, and cold air. The owner, Mr. Cato, was a well-known tech investor, a man whose picture appeared on magazines, wearing the calm smile of someone who ordered storms to stop and they listened. He was not home yet. The manager, Ms. Vero, waited in heels that clicked like metronomes of judgment. "Rules," she said, without greeting. "You work before sunrise and after sunset. You do not serve at the main table unless called. You eat in the back kitchen. No personal calls. No souvenirs from the house. If you break, you pay. And keep your eyes down." "Yes, madam." "What do you carry?" "Just my clothes and seeds from home." "Seeds?" "For cooking. And for hope." Darrow laughed with no warmth. "Hope? In this house, only results count." The first hours passed with silent chores. Amina washed crystal that looked too fragile to touch. She scrubbed a courtyard that did not seem dirty. She lifted heavy boxes that bruised her arms. In the pantry, a cook named Yemi slipped her a crust of bread. "Eat before they see," Yemi whispered. "You are skin and bones." "Thank you," Amina said. "One day I will repay you. Just stay kind. That is enough." Late afternoon brought guests, luxury cars, and laughter that bounced off the marble. A charity dinner filled the mansion with perfume, polished shoes, and the soft ring of dishes. Cameras flashed. A local TV crew filmed the arrivals. Darrow barked orders like a drill sergeant at a parade. "You. Village girl. Carry the tray. Careful. If you spill, you will clean the fountain with a toothbrush." Amina held the silver tray steady. Her hands trembled. Then came the moment that would stain her memory. At the center of the living room, under a chandelier that dripped light like rain, Darrow pointed at Amina's worn shoes and spoke loudly for all to hear. "Look at this," Darrow announced. "Our mansion now hires museum pieces from the countryside." Laughter rippled like a cold wind. A few guests turned away, ashamed but silent. One man, tall, in a simple gray suit, lingered at the edge of the room, unnoticed. His hair was cut plain, his shoes dusty, his posture easy. He looked like a driver or a delivery man who got lost among silk dresses and gold cufflinks. He watched Amina's face. He watched longer than anyone should. A waiter rushed, collided with Amina, and a glass fell, shattering near her feet. Silence tightened. Darrow did not miss her chance. "Stop everything," she announced. "Our new maid brings village weather. Clumsy and careless." Her voice rose. "Kneel and pick it up. With your hands." "Madam, please," Amina said softly. "There are shards." "Then be careful." Amina knelt on the polished stone. Her knees hurt. Her fingers bled where a small shard kissed her skin. She kept her eyes down. She whispered in her heart, "I will not break." She remembered her father's voice, "Move like water, not like fire." Someone chuckled. Someone filmed on a phone. The gray-suited man stood near a column and watched without blinking. He studied Vero's lips as if memorizing the shape of each harsh word. He studied the guests who smiled and those who swallowed their shame. He studied Amina's hands, small and careful, collecting every piece and never once begging for mercy. He slid his phone into his pocket. His eyes were steady. His breathing was calm, but his jaw tightened once, like a door closing. The dinner resumed. Amina cleaned her hands, wrapped her fingers in a napkin, and served again as if nothing had happened. She carried food to tables that glowed with candles. She listened to speeches about generosity and opportunity. Her stomach twisted with quiet hunger and quiet pride. She would finish the shift. She would be paid. She would send something home. She would not cry where anyone could see. In the back kitchen, she took the tin of seeds from her bag for courage. She touched the lid and breathed. There was a moment in the corridor when she nearly fell from tired legs. She leaned against the wall. On a side table lay a plate of half-eaten canapés headed for trash. She reached and took a small piece, then stopped when she saw the CCTV camera blinking red. She put it back. Integrity, she thought. Even when no one would know. Hungry? A voice asked. It was the man in the gray suit. He stood in the shadow near the corridor's end. His voice was low and warm. I am fine, she said, surprised. Thank you. He nodded and disappeared before she could add anything. She did not know he turned left instead of right, took a back stair, and entered a study where a portrait of Mr. Cato hung like a mirror. He sat in the leather chair behind the desk and closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He removed a plain ring from his pocket, a ring the tabloids once called a symbol of a broken promise. He slid it on, then off. He checked a dashboard on the desk screen, typed a passcode only one person on Earth knew. Then he shut it down again. He stood, loosened his tie, and returned to the corridor, a ghost among his own guests. 2 hours later, when the dinner ended and the musicians slipped away, Vero lined up the service staff in the courtyard. She spoke loudly again, as if the courtyard itself needed schooling. Tonight we saw incompetence, she announced. We employ charity cases who think a mansion is a village barn. A few guests lingered by the veranda and heard every word. One was the man in gray, again in the shadow. Vero pointed at Amina. You. What is your name? Amina. Amina, if you ever embarrass this house again, you will leave with nothing. Not even your shoes. Amina swallowed. Yes, madam. Now clean the fountain. With the toothbrush. Vero dropped a small brush into Amina's hands. If you finish before sunrise, you may eat. Amina walked to the fountain. The night air was cool. The water glittered under garden lights. She knelt and began to scrub. Her hands moved slow, steady. She hummed a song her mother used to sing, about rivers that find the sea no matter how many stones tried to stop them. Hours stretched like long rubber bands. Her back ached. She kept going. Out of sight, the man in gray leaned against a pillar. He watched until his eyes stung. He had watched suffering before. He had watched and done nothing once, years ago, and it almost broke him. Not again. A black car rolled past the gate after midnight. The real Mr. Cato was supposedly on a trip. The guard greeted the car without looking hard. The man in gray walked to the gatehouse and signed a log as temp driver. He handed the guard a thermos and a bag of snacks. For you, brother, he said. Stay awake. You are kind, the guard said, surprised. Drivers do not share. Tonight we will, the man replied. Amina scrubbed until her hands felt like wood. When she rose to stretch, her head swam. She reached for the rim of the fountain, slipped, and fell into the shallow basin. The cold shocked her lungs. She surfaced, coughing. She laughed once at the absurdity, then shivered. She climbed out, dripping, and sat on the stone lip, teeth chattering. She thought about the seeds. She thought about her father's hand planting them in dust with a smile that believed in rain. She whispered to the dark, I am still here. If anyone had listened closely, they would have heard another whisper from the shadowed pillar, so am I. By the time pale light touched the tips of the palm trees, Amina had finished. She returned the toothbrush to the supply shelf. She reached for the back kitchen door. It was locked. She knocked gently. No response. She sat on the step and hugged herself. Her clothes were damp. Her lips were blue at the edges. Finally, she took the tin of seeds from her bag and held it like a warm stone. Not yet, she thought. I will not eat them. They are not food. They are a promise. A door opened. A figure stepped out and put a folded blanket around her shoulders. It was the man in the gray suit. Up close, his eyes held both kindness and the weight of a long journey. There's porridge on the stove, he said. Eat before anyone arrives. I cannot without permission. You have permission, he said, with a strange certainty that she did not understand. Who are you? She asked. Just someone who hates to see good people punished. He disappeared again. Amina stood and entered the kitchen. A pot of porridge waited, steaming like a hug. Yemi nodded to her. Eat, sister. Today you need strength. Amina smiled and blessed the food in her heart. Around mid-morning, trouble arrived like a marching band. Darrow stormed into the staff hall waving a phone. Who took food without logging it? She demanded. Who left the fountain hose running? Our water bill will scream. No one spoke. Amina opened her mouth, but the man in gray appeared behind Vero, holding a small folder. Good morning, he said. Darrow glanced at him, ready to swat away a fly. Who are you? Driver, he said. Errand man. Runner of small things. He smiled without showing teeth. Then run to the gate and collect a delivery, Darrow snapped. He tilted his head. Of course. He did not run to the gate. He walked to the study, closed the door, and made a call on a line that rang in a room where decisions shaped markets. He spoke softly, and the person on the other end listened like a soldier to a commander. When he hung up, his hands trembled for the first time that day. He remembered a road in another country, a storm, a girl who sang in the rain while men laughed at her because of her shoes. He remembered failing to act then. He would not fail now. Days passed. Amina worked with quiet dignity. The man in gray kept showing up, always in corners, always with small kindnesses placed where need would find them. A pair of soft insoles appeared in Amina's locker. A small first aid kit showed up in the staff washroom. A note, written in neat ink, said, You are not invisible. She kept the note tucked behind the lid of her seed tin. She did not know who wrote it. She only guessed. She was careful not to look when she felt him near. She feared kindness could turn to trouble if Vero noticed. One afternoon, Amina was assigned to carry a tray into the small meeting room. Inside sat 3 men in suits and Vero, all scanning documents. On the screen glowed a presentation about a land deal. The title slid across the screen like a snake, Riverside Renewal. Amina recognized the maps. That was her home valley. The dotted line cut through farms where children chased goats and grandmothers sold mangoes. She stumbled and nearly dropped the tea. Darrow snapped her fingers. Careful, Darrow said. Those numbers are worth more than anything you own. Amina's heartbeat pounded. Madam, that is my village. Darrow raised an eyebrow. Which proves my point. Please, Amina said, voice small. This plan will push families away. Darrow smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. Families will be compensated in a manner approved by the board. Amina looked at the men. Their eyes were glass. She bowed her head and left the room. She went to the supplies closet and cried quietly where the mops could witness. That night she wrote a letter she could not send. She described the river. She described the smell of wet soil after the first rain. She described her father's laugh. She folded the letter and slid it into the seed tin. When she closed it, she made a decision. She would find the owner of this house. She would beg him to slow down. Even a few months could save the harvest, could buy time to find fair terms. She did not know the owner wore a gray suit and stood 10 steps behind her every day. The chance came with a gala 3 days later. More cameras. More glitter. More speeches about future and progress. Darrow looked like a queen with a crown made of approval. Amina, assigned to the back porch, saw a black SUV arrive and a short column of bodyguards step out. A man in a navy suit walked between them. The guests buzzed, "Mr. Cato is back." Amina's breath caught. She wiped her hands on her apron and hid the seed tin behind a potted plant. She waited like a bow pulled tight. When Mr. Cato entered the hall, applause rose like a wave. He smiled for cameras, shook hands, and raised a glass. Amina slipped through the edge of the crowd, heart pounding. She reached the rope line just as he passed. A guard stepped forward to block her. She bowed her head. "Please," she whispered. 2 minutes. For the river. The guard frowned. Mr. Cato paused. He looked at Amina with polite confusion, then past her as if seeking an exit. Darrow materialized like smoke. "What is this?" Darrow snapped. "Staff do not approach guests." "I will be brief," Amina said. "Sir, your plan." "Remove her," Darrow ordered. "This is a celebration." The guards took Amina gently by the arms. Her cheeks burned with shame. She twisted once, not to escape, but to reach her seed tin. It fell from behind the plant and clinked on the floor. The lid rolled. A few seeds scattered like small, brave moons at her feet. The hall watched, curious. Someone laughed. Someone whispered, "How charming." Amina bent to pick up the seeds. Before she could, a hand beat her to it. The man in the gray suit collected the fallen seeds with careful fingers and placed them back into the tin. He closed the lid and offered it to her as if returning a crown. "You dropped your future," he said softly. "Hold it tight." "Thank you," she whispered, eyes bright. "I will." Darrow scoffed. "Drivers now play heroes?" Mr. Cato's attention followed the murmur. He glanced from the gray-suited man to Amina to Darrow. Something in his face shifted. He gestured to the guard. "Let her speak," he said. 2 minutes. Then we celebrate. A hush spread. Amina felt her throat close. She forced words through anyway. "Sir," she said, "I am from the valley your company plans to renew. The river feeds our fields. The plan takes the water. We will be sent away. The compensation is a paper promise. I know I am just a maid. But I am also a daughter. My father, his health failed after years of breaking soil with his hands. If we lose the fields, he will lose the piece of himself that still breathes. I ask for time. Bring the elders to the table. Let us talk like people, not like numbers." She stopped. Silence followed like a respectful guest. Darrow laughed, brittle. "Touching. But we do not negotiate community plans with staff." Mr. Cato looked at the man in gray. A long look. The kind that had history in it. The man in gray did not blink. "Schedule a review," Mr. Cato told a deputy. "Engage with the local council." Darrow opened her mouth. Closed it. Smiled tightly. "Of course." Amina exhaled. Relief loosened her spine. She stepped back. Then a voice at the far end of the hall cut through the calm like a thin knife. "Check your pocket," it called. "Let us see what the maid really is." Heads turned. It was a junior investor, a man Darrow favored at meetings. He held up a wallet. "Found this outside the study," he said with a theatrical shrug. Inside were notes with project passwords. And a letter to a rival firm. Curious. Gasps dotted the hall. Darrow's eyes lit with hungry light. Search the staff, Darrow commanded. No, Mr. Cato said. We do not humiliate people without reason. The junior investor strolled forward. He waved at Amina. Maybe ask her. She has been snooping around the meeting rooms with tea trays. That is one way to sip more than tea. A guard stepped toward Amina. The man in gray stepped between them, not aggressive, just present. She serves tea. She does not steal, the gray-suited man said. And you are? The junior investor asked with a smirk. Temporary help, the man in gray said. A believer in basic decency. Darrow clapped once, sarcasm in her palms. How quaint. The guard hesitated, then reached for Amina's bag. Amina froze. She thought of the seeds. She thought of the note tucked into the lid, the one that said you are not invisible. She thought of all the eyes watching. She nodded. Search, she whispered. I have nothing to hide. The guard opened the bag. He pulled out a folded sweater. A small notebook. A photograph of a man with kind eyes. The tin of seeds. He opened the tin, revealing seeds and a small paper. He unfolded it. For words, you are not invisible. Is that a confession? The junior investor asked, smiling. It is a blessing, Amina said quietly. The guard reached again, then stopped, frowning. He looked up. No passwords, he said. Then check her locker, Darrow said quickly. She is clever enough to hide what she took. They marched to the staff room. The guard opened Amina's locker. Inside sat a neat bundle of clothes, a pair of better insoles, and a small pouch. He opened the pouch. A flash drive fell into his hand. There, the junior investor crowed. What did I say? Amina's knees weakened. She had never seen that drive before. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish in air. Darrow smiled as if she had swallowed sunlight. Call the police, Darrow said. We are done with charity. Amina shook her head, tears burning. I did not. The man in gray touched her elbow. Breathe. I did not, she repeated, voice clear now. I did not. In that moment, Faith cracked. Mr. Cato's face darkened. He raised a hand to call the authorities. The man in gray stepped forward. One moment, he said, tone like a gate that would not move. Who are you to delay me? Mr. Cato asked, annoyed. A fool who once made a bigger mistake than this, the man replied. And someone who put that flash drive where it is. Gasps scattered. The room turned like a sunflower toward the light of spectacle. Darrow blinked. What game are you playing? No game, the man said. Just timing. He looked at Amina. His voice went softer. Forgive me for letting it go this far. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key card. He slid it through the adjacent door reader. The security monitor lit up, showing recordings from the past hour. He tapped twice, rewound, and pressed play. The screen showed the junior investor entering the staff area. He looked both ways. He opened Amina's locker with a spare master key. He placed the flash drive. He left. The timestamp glowed clear and cold. A sound rose from the crowd, half outrage, half relief. The junior investor went pale. Darrow's lips parted, then pressed into a thin red line. Who are you? Mr. Cato demanded again, voice low. The man in gray smiled without joy. He removed his jacket and handed it to a guard. He unbuttoned his collar. He walked to the center of the room where the chandeliers could not hide him. He spoke in a voice that filled the space without shouting. My name is not important. But for paperwork, call me Sephew Cato. Silence broke like a dropped glass. Mr. Cato's eyes went wide, then narrowed with 100 complicated emotions. You are not due back until next month, Mr. Cato said, stunned. I changed my plans, Sephu replied. I wanted to see how our house treats those without a voice. Murmurs swelled. Cameras tilted. Guests whispered, he went away after the loss, he vanished from public. Sephu's past sat behind his eyes like a thundercloud. Years ago, a woman he loved chose a world that moved faster than promises. A deal fell apart. Employees paid in layoffs. The internet blamed Sephu. He left the spotlight. He worked in shadows, rebuilt quietly, and learned the shape of cruelty in boardrooms and kitchens. He knew the taste of humiliation. It tasted like metal and ash. Sephu turned to the junior investor. You set up a blameless woman to protect your leak, he said. Security logs show your email to arrival. You carried a wallet you claimed you found near a room you had no authorization to enter. Try another trick. The junior investor sputtered. You cannot speak to me like. Guards, Sephu said, escort him to the office. He will wait for the police. He faced Vero. Her confidence trembled but did not fall. She lifted her chin. I follow orders, Vero said. I maintain standards. You abused a human being in front of cameras and called it standards, Sephu said, calm as stone. You forced a hungry worker to choose between dignity and crumbs. In my absence, you turned our values into a talking point. Vero's eyes flashed. Values do not clean floors, she said. Soft hearts break budgets. Funny, Sephu replied. Your bonuses grew while staff meals shrank. Accounts will tell us how. For now, hand over your access card. Vero hesitated. Then she smiled, slow and dangerous. Fine, she said, unclipping the badge. But you think this is over? You have no idea what you've stepped into. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the room lights flickered. The chandelier dimmed, then brightened, then died. A murmur rippled. Phones lit like small lanterns. The security monitor went black. A klaxon wailed once and cut. The house fell into a soft dark. Sephu moved first. Emergency generators, he said to a guard. Now. Mr. Cato checked his phone. Communications are jammed, he said, alarmed. Vero's smile in the dark was a crescent. I told you. You have no idea. From the hallway, a scent rose, a sharp chemical tang. Smoke alarms stayed mute. Yemi shouted, kitchen. People began to cough. Panic is a fast language. Guests pushed. Staff pulled. Sephu's voice cut through the chaos like a steady drum. Move to the garden, he called. Follow the walkway lights. Hold your scarves to your faces. Do not run. He found Amina by the potted plant where she had hidden her seeds. He pressed the tin into her hand. Stay with me, he said. We will get them out. They moved through corridors like a river finds any gap. In the kitchen, an oily smoke licked the ceiling. A small fire crawled along a row of paper towels near the stove. Someone had killed the alarm and wedged the fire door to spread the trouble. Sephu closed the wedge with his foot and slammed the door. He grabbed an extinguisher and put his weight behind the hose. The foam coughed, then poured. The smoke hissed. The fire shrank, then died. Amina tied a scarf over her mouth and pulled Yemi forward. This way, she said. Stay low. In the garden, guests scattered on the lawn, coughing. The guard at the gate had propped it open. Sirens wailed in the distance now, then closer. Mr. Cato stood near the fountain, barking into a phone that finally connected. Sephu counted heads. He went back inside for 2 housekeepers trapped by a jammed door, shoulder-checked it open, and guided them out. When he stumbled back onto the lawn, his eyes burned, and his breath rasped. Amina pressed a bottle of water into his hand. He drank, then smiled with half a mouth. You kept your promise, she said, voice breaking with relief. You helped. You kept yours, he said, glancing at the tin. You did not let go. Fire crews swarmed. The power returned. The alarms found their voice too late. Police cars lined the street. The junior investor sat handcuffed on the steps, small now under the weight of his own choices. Vero stood by the fountain with a posture that defied defeat. She watched Cepheus like a chess player studies a queen. When officers approached her with questions about disabled alarms, she smiled politely and said, "I am only a manager. I do not touch technical systems." Her eyes said, "Prove it." By evening, the chaos settled. The guests left in cars with windows rolled tight. Mr. Cato sat in the study with his head in his hands. Cepheus stood by the window and watched the sky turn the color of ashes. Amina waited outside the door, unsure if she should stay or leave. Cepheus called her in. "You gave us more than warning," he said. "You gave us a mirror. We did not like the reflection." "I only asked to be heard," Amina said. "You were," he replied. "And you will be again." He looked at Mr. Cato. "We will meet the elders. We will find a plan that does not crush a river to feed concrete." Mr. Cato nodded, tired. "Yes." Cepheus turned back to Amina. "There is something else," he said. "You should know it from me. Years ago, I watched someone I cared for being humiliated in a room like this. I did nothing. I told myself I could fix it later. There was no later. It cost me a piece of myself. Today I watched again. I almost stayed quiet again. But your dignity would not let me." Amina's eyes softened. "Pain taught you," she said. "Then you taught pain to wait outside." Cepheus laughed once, surprised by the beauty of her words. He rubbed his chest as if a long knot had slipped loose. "You have a voice that carries," he said. "Would you consider something different? Work with our community outreach team for the river discussions. Not as a mascot. As a liaison. Paid properly. Trained properly. Safe." Amina looked at her hands. They were still. "I will accept if it helps the valley," she said. "But I am still a maid tonight." "Tonight you rest," Cepheus said. "Tomorrow we begin." Weeks followed. Meetings at town halls that smelled of chalk and sweat. Elders with eyes like old trees sat on benches and asked hard questions. Engineers presented new maps where the river curved free around farms. Compensation terms turned from fog to binding numbers written on paper with signatures that meant something. Amina learned how to translate jargon into stories. She said, "Imagine the river as a grandmother. She must keep her skirt clean to walk without stumbling." Elders nodded. Engineers scratched their heads and tried again until everyone understood. Between meetings, Cepheus returned to the mansion. He reopened the staff dining budget. He installed a complaint line that went to a human, not a machine. He rehired 2 cooks Vero had dismissed for insufficient shine. He also faced Vero across a table with lawyers. The evidence of the disabled alarms was tricky, she had used others to do the dirty work. But there were messages with her tone, orders framed as suggestions, and expenses that smelled wrong. She denied. She deflected. She threatened to countersue. The case would take time. In the meantime, she stood outside the gates, watching the life she had ruled without mercy move on without her. On a hot afternoon, the valley held a gathering under a big fig tree. Children chased each other. Women sold fritters. Old men told stories that began in one place and ended somewhere else, but always landed like a grain of salt on the tongue, useful and clear. A lawyer read the agreement aloud. Cepheus signed. Mr. Cato signed. The village council signed. A cheer rose like a flock of birds escaping a net. Amina hugged her father, who had traveled slow but determined to be there. He took her hand, turned it palm up, and pressed something into it, the ring her late mother used to wear on a string around her neck, worn smooth by years of love. "You carried seeds," he said. "Now carry this. When you feel small, remember she saw you as big as the sky." As the crowd dispersed, a courier in a dusty shirt approached Sephew with a folder. He glanced at the stamp. His face shifted. He opened it and found a document with a land registry seal. It was a will. The name on the donor line was someone he recognized from a scar down his memory, a mentor who had cut him loose when the scandal came, a mentor who had vanished to a quiet farm. The will stated that a piece of land near the valley, rich and hidden, had an heir. Not Sephew. A child born in the city to a woman who had worked at the mentor's house as a maid, years before. The child's name matched a name that had appeared on a letter Amina once kept in her seed tin, a letter to a mother she lost young. The dates danced in Sephew's mind like fireflies forming a pattern. He read again. He paled slightly. Then he closed the folder gently as if it held a bird. He found Amina by the fig tree, helping a boy tie a shoe. He watched her for a moment, his face a careful stone. He considered saying nothing. Secrets could sleep. But sleep often turns to storms later. He cleared his throat. "There is a document you should see," he said. Amina took the folder. She read slowly. When she reached the name that should not have been there, she swayed. She sat on a low wall. The fig tree's shadow held them both. "I do not understand," she whispered. "This says my mother, and this land. Why would a powerful man leave anything to us?" "Because truth walks in circles and sometimes comes home tired," Sephew said softly. "Your mother worked for him. Perhaps they were closer than we knew. Perhaps he wanted to do right too late. Perhaps someone hid this." The clerk wrote that it was misfiled and found during an audit. Amina's heart pounded. If this is true, others might feel betrayed. They will think I used my role to gain quietly. "You did not know," Sephew said. "But it will look wrong unless we handle it in daylight." That night, under lanterns in the village hall, Amina stood before faces she loved and some that had doubted her. She held the folder in both hands. "This found me today," she said. "I did not ask for it. I did not even dream of it. It names me in a way that turns my world on its side. I will not take a thing in secret. I ask you, what is right? If this land can help us build a school, a clinic, a market, then let it be ours together. If you ask me to refuse it, I will. If you ask me to share it, I will. If you ask me to hold it in trust for the valley, I will." An old woman rose. Her back was bent but her eyes were sharp. "Child," she said, "you stood before rich people and did not tremble. You stood before us and offered your hands empty. Keep the land, but tie it to the valley with a rope of promises. Build what we need, not what strangers think we want." A murmur of agreement filled the hall like rain finds the dry. Amina nodded, tears bright. "I will," she said. "We will." Outside, near the doorway, Vera watched through a window, face half-lit by lantern glow. How had she come here? A cousin in the valley had texted about the gathering. Darrow had driven on a back road, curiosity sharp as a blade. She had thought to catch Amina in vanity. Instead, she saw something else, humility with power. It burned her eyes like smoke. She turned to go, then paused when a hand touched her car door. Sephew stood there, alone, as if he had always known she would come. "You still haunt doorways," he said. "You still play savior," she said. "Different costumes, same play." "You can choose a new script," he replied. "You are clever. Be brave instead." She laughed without joy. "Bravery does not feed ambition. Ambition without a spine becomes hunger that eats everyone," he said. "Walk away from the old game. There are programs that could use your skills without your cruelty. Choose one." "For you?" she taunted. "For you," he said. "No one wins the war you are fighting." She studied him. For a flicker, something human moved behind her eyes. Then it was gone. She slid into the car and drove into the dark. Sephew watched the tail lights drift away like two small moons. He hoped. He feared. Months braided into a new life. The Valley School rose, brick by patient brick. A clinic opened with a nurse who knew how to joke while handing medicine. A small market shade protected farmers who sold greens and dignity. Amina split her days between the valley and the city office, where she had a desk by a window and a plant that refused to wilt. She held meetings where she insisted the water jug be reachable by the person closest to the door. She kept the tin of seeds on her desk like a lighthouse. Sometimes she opened it and pressed her fingers to the cool metal, a private ritual to remember who she had been and who she refused to stop being. Sefyu changed too. He wore suits again but kept old habits, standing in corners, listening longer than comfort allowed. He and Amina talked often. They spoke about rivers and contracts, about fathers and kitchens, about pain and how to store it without letting it sour the heart. There was closeness, but they moved slowly, careful as people who had learned love can become another arena for cruelty if timing is wrong. They chose friendship as a bridge strong enough to hold whatever came later. One late afternoon, when the jacaranda trees purpled the sidewalks, Amina returned to the mansion for a staff gathering. Sefyu insisted on hosting to honor the workers. The fountain sparkled. Laughter felt different here now, less about display, more about relief. Yemi danced while stirring a pot, a miracle of coordination. The guard grinned like a man with fewer lonely nights. A courier arrived, breathless. He handed Sefyu an envelope stamped urgent. Sefyu opened it and frowned. Inside was a short letter on old stationery. It read, "I am sorry. They will come for the Valley agreements. Protect the registry. Trust only ink and witnesses. An old enemy." There was no signature. But tucked behind the letter was a photocopy of a document moving through a distant office, a petition to void the land grant and seize parcels for a private luxury development. The petition carried names that hid behind shell companies. One of the names, small but visible, belonged to someone familiar, a consulting firm Vero had once praised in every meeting. Sefyu looked at Amina. She read the paper. She felt her stomach drop like a stone into deep water. She closed her eyes for a second. Then she opened them steady. "Daylight," she said. "We take this into daylight. We gather the elders. We call the press. We bring the registry books. We show the faces behind the shell masks." Sefyu nodded. "Tonight. Before they rewrite the morning." They drove to the valley under a sky thick with stars that felt like ancestors walking with lamps. The village hall filled quickly. Elders took their places. Farmers arrived with shirts still dusty from fields. A local journalist streamed video on a phone strapped to a stick. Amina laid the documents on the table. Sefyu spoke with the authority of a man who had worn both shame and power and preferred truth to either. As the meeting began, a car engine growled outside. Doors slammed. Men in suits entered with that look city men carry when they think the ground belongs to them because their shoes are expensive. The lead man introduced himself as a legal representative. He attempted a calm smile. "There is confusion," he said. "The land grant has irregularities. We propose a temporary management agreement." "No," Amina said, simple as a locked door. He blinked. "We have city approval." She tapped the registry books. "We have signatures and witnesses and a hall full of people whose voices count." He smiled thinner. "You risk delay in building your clinic." "The clinic is already open," she said. He glanced at Sefyu, recalculating. "This can be friendly if we sign tonight." Sefyu's eyes did not move. Kindness does not arrive with tricks at midnight. The journalist's live stream clicked higher in viewers. Comments flew like moths to light. The legal man shifted. "You cannot block progress," he said louder, for the camera. "Progress does not trample grandmothers," Amina replied, also for the camera. At the back, someone slipped in, head down, scarf up. "Vero." She leaned against the wall, face a blend of pride and regret that neither side wanted to admit to the other. The legal man snapped his fingers at his assistant for papers. The assistant dug in a briefcase, confused. He pulled out the wrong folder. A contract with signature lines already filled. The journalist zoomed. Names glittered like fish in a net. Darrow's old consulting firm winked among them. Sephew stepped forward, voice even. We will adjourn to witness statements. Everyone here will sign a record that this attempt occurred. The documents will be scanned and sent to 3 separate offices. You will leave now. The legal man hesitated just long enough to prove guilt, then gathered his papers badly and hustled out. The hall exhaled. Amina felt her shoulders drop half an inch. She caught Darrow's eyes in the doorway. For a breath, they held each other's gaze. Woman to woman. Past to present. Enemy to possible future. Darrow looked away first. She left without a word. Weeks later, on the day the school's first library shelf filled with donated books, Amina stood in the doorway and listened to the sound that had powered her through nights of scrubbing and years of hunger. Children reading aloud, voices stumbling and rising, finding courage in sentences. Sephew stood beside her. He did not speak. He did not need to. Their hands did not touch. The space between them felt like an honest promise. The tin of seeds still sat on Amina's desk. She finally opened it one morning and took 3 seeds into her palm. She walked to a small patch near the school, knelt in the earth, and pressed the seeds into soil. She covered them with care. She poured a little water. She whispered, "Grow where we can see you." She stood, wiping her hands on her skirt. She felt the ring on the chain against her skin. It was warm from her heartbeat. Not every story ties itself in a neat bow. The case against Vero crawled through courts like a lizard under a hot fence. The junior investor sought a deal and learned that deals built on rock collapse. The consulting firm changed names like a snake sheds skin. The valley still wrestled with drought sometimes. People argued at meetings and then shared fruit afterward. Life, in other words, stayed real. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon like honey, Amina walked by the fountain at the mansion. She remembered the toothbrush, the cold water, the laughter. She did not hate the stones. She placed her palm on the rim, blessed it silently, and walked on. Sephew watched from the archway. You could move anywhere, he said. I already did, she replied. From silence to voice. He smiled like a man who had been forgiven by something larger than himself. What would you do, he asked, if tomorrow someone tried again to take the valley? Wake the elders, she said. Boil tea. Call the journalist. Gather ink and witnesses. And plant more seeds. The moral is simple and earned. Real power is not money or titles. It is the courage to keep your dignity when the room wants it cheap, the wisdom to make agreements in daylight, and the kindness to plant hope where everyone can see it grow.